What's going on, guys? This is Boss Jansen. I'm at Musicians Institute today, and I want to talk a little bit about the basics of samba drumming. So obviously there's already a lot of videos out there on YouTube, on basic different samba patterns and this and that. But what I've noticed is a lot of them are a very gringo version of these patterns. And from my experience learning from Brazilian musicians, it's not what they're actually doing over there. But let's hop in and look at a couple things. So like most Latin styles of music, the drum parts are a comprised amalgamation of a lot of percussion parts that are normally played by, one person per instrument. And now we have to figure out how to get all those different parts into 4 different limbs. So if we dive in, I guess we can start from the bottom up and we'll look at the feet pattern, which people always do teach right. That is the one part they do get right, which we all know and love. So it's typically what the surdos would play in a traditional percussion group or batucada. And it sounds a little something like this. I'll count it in 2, but the metronome you'll hear is, subdividing that 2, so 4. So here it goes. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Cool, so the next thing is what our right hand is doing, which will be, I guess, what the shakers do or what the caixa does. Basically just the rhythmic tempo, keeping the pace up. And that's basically just going to play 8th notes for this example at least, and I'm going to keep the bass drum in for the sake of context and, how the greater bar fits together. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Easy enough, right? Because the real melody part, and I guess the complicated part, the part with the most variations, the most, explorability, which isn't a word, that would be the snare drum part, or at least our left hand part, because it holds, for a lack of a better term, the clave within the pattern. Brazilian music doesn't necessarily have a clave the same way as Afro-Cuban music does, salsa music, but it translates over well the purpose of the part. So the clave for this pattern that I'll be doing on the cross stick for the sake of this groove. Actually, that leads me on to a very good anecdote at this part. I have a very good Brazilian friend that I used to live with, but when we were at Berkeley together, he used to work for the stage crew, which was, the hands on deck, the stage techs for all the venues around the school. So one time I just happened to be hanging out when he was getting a stage ready and he was sound checking a mic. And this was one of those moments of tell me that you're Brazilian without telling me that you're Brazilian. So he picks up the mic and goes, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3. I was like, dude, you're so Brazilian, you even mic check in Brazilian clave. That was hilarious to me. So that's what I use now in teaching that pattern. Just remember, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3. So this is really the kicker of why I wanted to make this video, because most channels teach you the bars the wrong way around. If we're looking at this as a 2-bar phrase, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3, they'll teach you backwards. So bar 2 first, which is essentially the Gringo version because it's nice and easy. It starts on the downbeat and it makes it really easy to just catch on and I guess play along. But it's not what you'll hear people doing in Brazil. So the important thing to notice is that you start on the upbeat actually before 1. So if I use my feet again for the context and then say the pattern over the top, you'll notice where it should kind of start. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3. 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 Does that make sense? So putting that all together on the drums, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Cool. And now the fun part. So the way the pattern starts doesn't start the way I just started the pattern. So what you'll always notice at the start of a phrase, not even necessarily just the start of the song, but when you go from verse to chorus or, between all the sections, they like to have a nice pickup note that I guess kind of like softly rolls you into gear rather than just being like, we're starting. And you can either do that by playing on the bass drum, one extra note, or I like to do it on the floor tom, but it's literally just a quarter note before the 1. 1, 2, 1, 2. Does that make sense? And before all of you get annoyed in the comments of me playing something different than I just taught, let me talk about that snare pattern, the way I just started that groove. So kind of going along with that pickup note, kind of rolling into gear, the way the snare pattern starts is kind of similar. So essentially the most common thing I've heard is that you do just play a bar of quarter notes before you get into bar 2. So remember, we have a 2-bar pattern of check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. So that first bar 1 is just a set of 4 quarter notes, and then you kick into bar 2 and carry on. So if we look at just bar 2, it's just 1, 2, 3, because the checks are always anticipations. So it's really just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. If that makes sense? So let me play it and see if you can follow along. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Did that make sense? So that about wraps up our groove for today. I guess the only thing now is just trying to, speed it up and get it out of a bossa tempo to a samba tempo. But as I said, there's a lot more variations to talk about, and really this is just the bread and butter that it can all kind of branch out from. So there might be a lot of videos around the corner of me talking about all the different ways it could go. We're talking about samba swing, different right hand patterns for different applications, and then just, the different subgenres I mentioned before and what kind of implications that might have for our snare drum part and maybe even bass drum parts, things like that. So stay tuned. There's so much to talk about on this topic. It's a very big country with a very rich history, so of course there's a lot to talk about. So with that being said, that's all I have for today. If there's anything I didn't make super clear, please leave a question in the comments. If you got other topics you want me to cover, those can go in the comments as well. And other than that, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the gems coming around the corner. And make sure you have fun drumming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, check, 1, 2, 3.